I just want to remind everyone of the sole purpose of today's program, which is to create awareness around the various areas in which you can use your degrees. So today, I would like to introduce our phenomenal panelists, beginning with Nicole Brown. She is the Mayor Pro Tem of Ypsilanti, Michigan, as well as an alumna of Eastern Michigan University. We also have Herman Moncure, Associate Attorney at Pike and Associate, and he is an alumnus of Eastern Michigan University. And finally, we have Ms. Janita Moore, Legislative Liaison for the Michigan Department of State, and she is also an alumna of Eastern Michigan University. Please welcome our panelists. So let's go ahead and dive in. So we're going to begin with your origin story, beginning with Nicole. So Nicole, tell us what you studied in college. Remind us of what you did as an undergraduate student in terms of where did you work as an undergrad? What type of organizations were you involved in on campus? And what steps did you take to arrive in your current role? Nicole, can you hear me okay?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but you're breaking up a little bit. Could you hear me okay?
Okay, I can hear you. I'm going to turn my camera off.
Okay.
Is this better?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, yes.
Were you able to hear the question?
I heard up until you said my origin story, where did I work on campus? What was my major? And then was there anything else?
Yes, just tell us what type of campus involvement you were a part of, in addition to the steps you took to arrive in your current role.
Okay, thank you. So first, again, thank you all for having me. My name is Nicole Brown McGee, and I have to apologize. I'm in a parking lot right now because I am doing after school pickup on Halloween. So there's a lot going on. So my apologies for the space that I'm in. But so my major in undergrad was communication with a minor in social work. I wanted to be involved with people and in community. I think from the moment that I set foot on Eastern's campus. And so some of the work that I did as a student, I worked in Vision and the Center for Multicultural Affairs, which I think is under a new name now, potentially at the university. And I was the head of the volunteer programs there. I also worked in the community media and theater arts department as a student staffer. So I worked directly for the department head at the time, who was Dennis Began, as his student secretary. And so I helped with, getting students overrides, getting folks into class, doing things in the office. And so it really taught me about the day-to-day needs of like running a department, running an office, working with alongside other people, and how to stay organized and
Nicole, I think we lost you. Nicole?
I'm gonna have to change my location. I will come back on. Can someone else go first? I'm gonna move.
Yep, no problem. So we are just gonna go ahead and move on to Herman Moncure. Herman, tell us, what did you study in college? Where did you work as an undergraduate? What type of organizations were you involved in on campus? And what steps did you take to arrive in your current role as an attorney?
Well, if I told you all the jobs I had during undergrad, we'll be here for a long time. Okay. I majored in business economics with the College of Business, a joint program with the College of Business, and I believe that's the Arts and Sciences, department. So the number of jobs, let's start with, I have work study jobs initially. I worked for the grants accounting department. That's the department that if you have a grant, if you're a professor, you have a grant and you need funding, they administered the grant at that time. So I was a student clerk there. I worked night watch. I worked for Kmart several years. worked for Home Depot part-time, but then I eventually had a full-time job working for Rainbow Rehab from my end of my sophomore year until I graduated. So I worked full-time while I was in school. So, sorry. And so the organizations I was in, I was the chapter president for the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated Theta Gamma chapter for 3 years, from 2002 to 2005. I was also the student justice, a student justice with the student government for 3 years, from 2002 to 2005. I was also involved in various the Residence Hall Association, RHA, for several years as a sort of like the, what do you call that, athletic coordinator, doing stuff like that. In terms of the steps I took to become an attorney, it was very, I would say, it wasn't a direct path. I initially, when I graduated from Eastern, I didn't get into law school. I got into business school. So at the point in which I graduated, I was looking to, what was my next steps. I wanted to become an attorney, but ultimately, the way I had a couple years where I probably shouldn't have been to school. I couldn't focus. I had some personal issues in which didn't allow me to focus, and ultimately paid the cost for that once I applied for law school. But I went to business school instead. Had a obtained a dual master's of finance and dual master's of business administration from Walsh College of Business. I finished those up in 2008 and 2011 and 2014 respectively. And then I decided to kind of pivot back and to get into law school once I was able to kind of right those wrongs in my undergrad studies. So applied for law school, got into law school, graduated from WMU Cooley Law School in 2019 with honors, and then took the bar in 2020, passed the bar 2020, and now I'm a barred attorney in the state of Texas. So.
That is amazing. Thank you very much. And Janita Moore, what is your origin story? Remind us, what did you study in college? Where did you work as an undergraduate student? What types of organizations were you involved in on campus? And what steps did you take to arrive in your current role? Tell us everything.
It's so funny that you say that because as I am a little older than most of you, so when I started here, Eastern didn't have all of the wonderful event. When I was at Eastern, we had to stand in line to register at Briggs Hall. So I'm gonna put that into perspective for you. And we were excited when we got telephone registration. So I'm gonna just begin there. And as far as my origin, I got a unique, it's always me, I always have a unique story. I started off, was supposed to be a political science major with a minor in communication. However, I had an advisor to tell me as an African-American female that we don't do well in political science. But you know me being who I am and very strong nature, I had to have a conversation with the dean in reference to this person. And, but because people have tenure and things of that nature, you can't do anything around it. But with the great thinking of the college, they were able to realign me. So my major ended up being public law and government, but all of my courses were aligned with political science as far as that program. They kind of mirrored themselves with a few exceptions. So that was my challenge number one, but I did not let that stop me. So that's my plug to anyone. Don't ever let anyone deter you or tell you what you cannot do. And then as far as working on campus, I came from a family that wanted you to focus on your education. I did have work study. So I worked in the admissions office. And so, but my family was like strictly do work study because they felt like if I worked and actually like took on full-time employment, that I would not finish my degree. They probably were right, because I would have fell in love with money. But for in school, I had to beg them. So they did let me work at Meyer. And because I wanted to become a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Delta Beta chapter, they allowed me to work for the United States Postal Service during the summer because they said they didn't send me to school for that. So that was how I was able to do all of that. So I was allowed to work at that time. But my family was rigid about me being focused on my education. And organizations I were involved in at the time, you don't have that anymore. I was involved with students or SOAAU, Students Organized for African American Unity. And so as well as being an NAACP member, and then of course being a member of Delta Beta chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated at the time, where I served as our chapter's treasurer during my tenure at school. And what was the other portion of the question? What did I miss?
So the other piece is, what steps did you take to prepare for your current role?
Well, I didn't come. Okay, this is the thing. I thought I was going to be like Herman and be an attorney. So that lets you know how life sends you in a whole different direction. So after leaving undergrad, you know, I am not a great test taker. So trying to, you know, study for the LSAT and do all of these wonderful things. I mean, I didn't like the grade, my score, and it was growing really frustrated, like how I'm gonna do this. So I've decided to pivot and decide to go out and work. And so I end up getting involved with the 24th District Court. I ended up working as a court clerk for a 24th District Court, which I was like, okay, that puts me in line with my major because it's public law and government. I'm working within the court system, and it taught me a lot of different facets of the criminal justice system from that perspective. And at that point, how I ended up where I am now was the mere fact that I had a church member who wanted to run for office. And because, you know, I was already working, I decided to support her in her endeavor and help her campaign. And because I really understood how that worked, and coming from a family that was always politically active and is involved in our community groups and various block clubs and associations, I understood that process. And so from that point, that's how I ended up in Lansing, because she asked me to come and work for her as legislative staff. So that in turn started off my career. But I did do my internship, because you had to have an internship course in undergrad, and far as in an area or working with I'm trying to think because it's been so long ago. Remember, that was like in 1992. So I was trying to remember myself and I believe at the time it was a legislative office, or that they had a district office, but promise you, I just cannot remember. But that's how I did my internship to get me in there. So that sort of intrigued me in that sense. So I feel like I've always had an unorthodox path of my career. So that's another thing, that don't let anything once deter you or think that it is a moment that hinders you or you have not succeed or achieved some type of success, because I still have a chance to affect laws, because I work right now with lawmakers in order to affect public policy. So I still have to study all of it and read all of it.
Thank you for that. And that is the sole purpose of this program. We want to show students that there are more than just traditional paths to get to where you're trying to go in life. So thank you for that, Janita. So we are going to move back to Nicole Brown. Nicole, please tell us your origin story. Let us know what you studied in college. Where did you work as an undergraduate student? What type of organizations were you involved in on campus? And what steps did you take to arrive at your current career?
All right, we're going to try this again. I hope you all can hear me now.
We can hear you perfect.
All right, so I apologize for the technical difficulties. So yes, in undergrad, I actually majored in communications and minored in social work. Listening to Herman and Tor Janita's stories, I didn't come to school thinking I was going to do either of those things myself. My parents wanted me to be a doctor. I was supposed to be pre-med. I came and took my first few biology and chemistry courses, and I was like, ha, this is not for me. And so I went into communications because I just knew that I liked to interact with people, and decided to minor in social work because of that. I wasn't sure if that's the path I wanted to lead. And also, how social work is described now these days, you didn't know that there were so many ways you could utilize a degree in social work. So I minored it instead of majoring. And so when I was in undergrad, I worked in the communications, media, and theater arts department as a student staff. I was also work study. I worked in Vision, which was our community engagement and volunteer office on campus in the Student Center, as well as the Center for Multicultural Affairs. And I oversaw all of the volunteer opportunities for students who were coming in and wanting to participate at that time. I also worked in academic service learning for a time to support, again, in some of the community initiatives that were happening under the leadership of Kathy Stacy back in between 2006 and 2010. Organizations that I participated in, I was a member of YBBW, which is You Beautiful Black Woman, and I was their community service chair, which of course makes total sense. I was a member also of the NAACP. I supported student government in a lot of their work, but I'll tell you now that, you know, I'm currently an elected official. I never saw myself in elected office. I never saw myself in government. I was gonna get a master's in social work and become a therapist and work in the community for folks who were disenfranchised and maybe didn't have the means to access private services. So I wanted to work in the public sector, nonprofit. And actually I ended up doing that. And so when I graduated from EMU, I began to work at Ozone House, which is a local nonprofit organization, as their outreach coordinator. And that is how I came in contact with local elected officials who eventually encouraged me to run for office when one of them was moving out of the area and no longer eligible to represent the community in that ward. And so the last part of the question was,
So the last part of the question is, what steps did you take to get to your current career?
Okay, perfect. So I was going down that path. Yeah, so I was an outreach coordinator doing what I thought I wanted to do, working in community. I was identifying safe places and spaces for young people and going to different organizations and businesses and just talking to a lot of people. And again, that's how I ended up in front of city council many times to present some of my findings to them to see how they could support local nonprofits who service young people and our seniors in the community with initiatives that would create safety and create recreation and create opportunities for those people. And so again, politics, political science wasn't my major. It wasn't something that I was working in. It just kind of happened from being a grassroots organizer and being out in community and partnering with others. So collaboration is really what led to me ultimately moving into the world of politics and running for elected office.
All right, thank you so very much. And I love the fact that your major was communications. So thank you so much again. So let's go ahead and move on. So now that everyone has heard our panelists' story, does anyone have any questions? We are moving into our Q&A segment. And if you do not have one, I do have a few burning questions that I would like to get our conversation started. So feel free to take yourself off of mute and ask your question, or you can just drop your question in the chat and I'll give you a couple moments for that. All right, well, seeing that there are no questions, I will go ahead and start our Q&A session. So, and this question is for all of our panelists. What advice would you offer to students wishing to have a career similar to yours, or for those who want to work in the same field as you? So if you can do it all over again, what would you do differently, knowing what you know today?
What do you want to start with? Oh, just...
Yep. So I'm sorry. Yep, Janita, you can go ahead and
okay. I was like, what does she want to start with? If I could do this all over again today, mentorship is a great thing. You cannot have enough mentors. I really wish I would have had a few more. I've gained mentors now that I've been in my profession for a while, but mentorship you please, if you can link up with someone or work with someone at the university or outside of, you have access, use your networks, connect, use the Alumni Association as a tool to be able to network. So you can find out where students are, ask the colleges, far as they should be able to tell you all the alums that at least come out those various colleges, to be able to network. And that way you'll have someone that will steadily help you along the way to give you guidance, because even at the university, your advisors can only do so much because they are inundated with such a large population. And so if I could do everything all over again, I would have definitely sought out mentors.
Got it. Thank you. Herman, same question. Knowing what you know today, what would you do differently, or just what advice would you offer to students seeking law school?
I would say definitely what Janita just said, network. For me, my family situation was, I came from a very depressed economic background. So when, I was fortunate that my grandparents provided a middle-class living for me, but in terms of, my family situation, I had no network. So I would say just be brave and, ask those persons who are in those fields that you come across. So you see something that, talks about law, and you go to those type of conference, go to those types of, I'm sorry, lost for words, but those types of events and those types of meetings, and, be vocal in those meetings, say that, I have an interest in law, and maybe talk to one or two people afterwards and say, hey, I'm looking for a possible mentor. Can you help me, along my way? Another thing I would do is, definitely pay attention. Again, me being a first generation college student, I didn't know the ins and outs of college in terms of, you're doing bad in the class, don't take that L. Don't take that L. Drop the class if need be. I took a lot of, a lot of failures. I got Fs on my transcript because I didn't know you can, drop a class, and rightfully so. They give you that reason because you may be going through something that you can't focus on school, and that was my case. I had a very bad personal situation for home, in which that didn't allow me to focus on school. School was not my number one priority at the time. So taking advantage of those things is not. You shouldn't hold yourself accountable for that. I mean, you always hold yourself accountable, but you shouldn't punish yourself, because that's the avenue that they give you, because they recognize you're young, you're trying to start a new life, and things come up. So take advantage of those, and preserve your GPA, certainly, because that was my main thing in terms of coming out, trying to go to law school. I mean, I graduated with a 3.0 GPA. I did. But when it came time to submit for the LSAT, they don't take, when they look at your GPA, they do not take your replacement GPA, they average the two. So if I was to get an F in the class, and if I was to turn around and get an A in that class versus an A, it's a C. So it's not 4.0, it's a 2.0. So when you go on and when you're submitting for the LSAT, it's still some sort of equation that you get in which your GPA times your LSAT score determines your overall score to get in, and schools look at that. So unfortunately, my GPA was so depressed that my LSAT score wouldn't have made a difference. So I would say definitely preserve your GPA and get mentors to help you along the way.
Thank you. Very, very true. Just because you two mentioned mentor. So my question is, how did you go about finding your mentor? Or what advice would you give a person who is looking for a mentor?
Well, again, I would just piggyback and just pivot back and just say, keep your eye out on campus for those things in which the there's always a pre-law something going on, right? There's always like political science. A lot of political science majors or events are centered around law. Keeping your eye out and maybe even talking to someone in in advising, in which maybe they know of some programs that kind of get you into that mindset. I think there is a legal fraternity on campus, so trying to be involved in that arena and just kind of immersing yourself in that space opens you up to those opportunities, right? Because again, joining student organizations, like for me, I was fortunate to join, and this may not be for everyone, but Omega Psi Phi certainly gave me an avenue towards mentors, to which my own chapter brother, I was able to kind of align myself with him and ultimately ask him questions that helped me along my way. So it's one of those things in which you have to, take a little effort, but, join some organizations, maybe reach out to advising or another campus organizations that kind of get you into that arena, that law arena, and just be bold and just ask the question. A lot of people are looking, they want to help. So just be bold and ask the question.
I think I would piggyback on that and say the same about being bold, and also on top of getting involved on campus, don't limit yourself to that, because there are people with, Eastern is housed within Washtenaw County, within the city of Ypsilanti, and there are events that happen. There are organizations around the city, around the county, that have folks who want to mentor, who want students and youth to come for them to share their knowledge and expertise and be that stepping stone, right, to lift as they climb. And so just being open and paying attention to what's happening on campus as well. There are organizations who host events all the time. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Delta Beta chapter host programs and bring in speakers, and other organizations do the same. And so you have opportunities there to be bold and to network and to get yourself out there and meet people who are in your respective field that would be happy to mentor you. I sat on a panel 2 weeks ago, and there were students who approached me after and said, hey, I'm a part of student government and I may want to run for office. Can I call you? Or can I email you? Absolutely. That's something that that I know I speak for myself, and I'm sure Herman and Janita both want to do, is support young folks who want to do what we're doing, because we wish that we had more people supporting us when we were trying to figure out our path.
Thank you very much. Great advice. Mentorship is imperative. So I'm going to pull a few of the questions from the chat before we move forward. So one of our attendees would like to know, what advice would you give for studying for the LSAT? Herman.
For me, what my approach was, take as many practice tests, practice questions as possible. I think you have to be aware of your learning style. If you learn better with writing answers down, then when you take a test and you don't know the answer to that question, okay, when you come back to it, write that question out with the answer. Another thing would be to do is to find a tutor. I found a tutor, for things that I didn't know. For the LSAT, you have, I don't know if they changed it, but I know when I took it, you had logic games, logic reasoning, logic, what's that, analysis or something like that, right? Reading comprehension. So I was a great games taker. So I think you get 25 or 26 points on each of those. So I would, score about 23-24 points on those. But I had, in terms of logic reasoning, I was probably around a 17-18 score. And that's on a good day. So I would find a tutor who could help me with that particular part of the LSAT. And, again, there's several resources. Right now, I think you can certainly find study materials online that have exam bank of all the LSAT questions or LSAT related questions. I would recommend you just, do those. When I was studying for the bar, and this is kind of not the same, but along the same lines, I would wake up and I would just do, before the first thing in the morning, I would wake up pretty early and just hammer out maybe about 30 or 40 questions a day. And what you will see is that those questions that those questions take there's some sort of pattern, right? And you get used to the pattern of the questions in which you can identify where they are readily, trying to steer you. And, again, taking a lot of practice questions. If you don't know the answer or you're having a problem in a particular section, find a tutor, someone who's either, taught a Kaplan class or another type of study materials class, and, they will help you with that, right? And help you kind of guide you in terms of what you are lacking in that particular section. And then two, just, give yourself enough time to, in terms of from that test, don't start studying 3-4 weeks prior to the test. Give yourself maybe 4 months. Say I'm studying, I'm taking the LSAT on this particular day. Maybe you give yourself 3 to 4 months before you take that test, if more, to give yourself enough time to get acclimated, take enough questions. And if you're, comfortable with your score, your practice score, then, schedule the test and go forward, be successful. But if you're having a hard time, again, give yourself enough time to get to study and maybe find a tutor to help you with those problem areas.
That is perfect. Thank you so much. So I hope that answered your question. And what has undergrad, this is to all of our panelists, what has undergrad taught you that you consistently use in your professional career?
I'll answer that. A checklist, task. I'm very task oriented. And so it teaches you actually prioritization. You got to prioritize. In college, you should be prioritizing your workload as far as how you study, when tests coming up, your assignments and things of that nature. So I live off of a to-do list, a checklist. Now I'm still old school. I know they put all of this in technologies in the phones, but I still like my old pen and paper. And I keep steno. Unfortunately, it's so funny if you could see next to me, I have like tons of steno pads because of all the notes that I constantly take with my checklist. So that came from just a habit I developed in college, as far as knowing I had to prioritize my work, and also having to really do that now because I was a person that was involved in a very tragic car accident. So having to learn how to do certain things over again, the list becomes even more important to ensure that I don't forget anything or make sure that I have all the things that I need in order to succeed. So I use that now in my professional life now, because as I lobby for the department, I have to make sure that I hit key points at a certain time, because members will only pay attention at their attention span is very short. So you only have a certain amount of time to make your point or get your point across. So having to write that out as my testimony, that's even bulleted. So I'll know these are the highlights that you need to hit. So that's the one thing that carried over from undergrad, even when going to get my master's. You have to prioritize, you have to have your list, you check things off to ensure that you are moving in the right direction. And sometimes you need to rearrange to make it more conducive to what you are doing at the time.
Wonderful. That's great advice. I am a to-do list maker as well. Does anyone else want to add to that question?
Sure, I can answer it. I am also a to-do lister, and even though I'm a millennial, I do like pen and paper as well. I carry a notebook everywhere I go. But the other thing I would add would be that I learned that relationships really do matter, and you never know when you're going to need someone or when you're going to bump back into them. And so making sure that the impression that you leave on someone is always positive and you leave someone better than how you found them. Even in my career now, I graduated from EMU with my bachelor's in 2011. But some of the people that have supported me most, or that I bump into now as I've been campaigning, are folks who I met on campus, whether they were faculty, staff, or my peers. And so if I had not built and cultivated, a good presence and a positive name for myself, that may have, hindered me in my endeavors to run for office, because those are my constituents now. And so not knowing that this was where I would have been, I wasn't thinking about that. But luckily, the work that I did on campus and who I was interacting with were positive, but it could have bit me in the butt, right? Later on, as I'm an elected official now. So relationships really matter, and networking really matters, and making sure that, the people that you think may not be to your benefit or you may not see in the future, promise you will run past them again. So just keeping that in mind.
Thank you, Nicole. So this is a perfect transition to another question for you. So what advice do you have for someone who wants to run for office in their local ward?
Well, it's interesting. I have different advice now than I did when I first ran, because I didn't plan to run. When I first ran, again, someone approached me because I was just doing organizing. I was in the community. But what I would say now, as being someone who sits on the dais, is go to those meetings and see what they do. Make sure that that's a good fit for you. There are also, outside of being elected, there are appointed positions that you could have as on a board of commission, like Parks and Rec, or a planning commission. Participate in things that are happening within your local municipality to see what they do, how it works. Start learning some of the ins and outs. Robert's Rules of Order, maybe. That's something that will not only benefit you in a role of elected office, but also in other organizations. If you ever sit on the board of something or work with an organization that uses that process. So I would say to show up is the first thing. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to get engaged, because a lot of times that's what we want from you. And once we meet you in doing that, then it's easier for you to cultivate support when you decide that you want to throw your name in the ring to run for office. So go to the meetings, meet the people who are elected doing the work that you want to do, and start from there, but continue participating and showing up.
Perfect. Thank you. So I have a question. And Janita, feel free to chime in as well. I know that you gave us a piece to this question that I'm about to ask, but did anyone face any type of barriers while pursuing their degree or while pursuing their current role? And what steps did you take to overcome them?
Oh, well, I'm always facing a barrier. Well, I explained to you the piece of with Eastern, far as just having someone to be able to realign my studies, but I still face challenges right now, because being an African-American female in the space where it is a male dominant space, especially for lobbying, and having to work and battle to have your position or your opinion of things, or having it to be, confirmed or affirmed by someone that doesn't look like you. And so that is a constant battle that I have, but to you always continue to be the best. Know your information. Like, I know what I know. And if I don't know it, I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to do some research to make sure that I provide the best position possible. But you have to understand your strength and your weaknesses, and you have to look at what societal pressures add to that. And you determine at the end of the day, this is what you want to do. This is the strategy in which you're going to use, and you stand firm in your decision. You don't let anyone persuade you that what you stated was not correct, especially when they pay you to do that particular service, and that is your area of expertise. So those are challenges I currently face right now. So it's always a battle dealing with lawmakers, as far as they always want to hear from someone else. Is Janita correct? And 9 times out of 10, I am. So, but you just keep pushing forward, because I know that I am good in my craft. I'm not trying to be arrogant or bold, but I am good in my craft. I wasn't able to do this for 23 years if someone didn't think that I was good at what I was doing. So you have to be confident in who you are and your ability and your skill set, and know that you have a purpose and you need to move forward in that purpose.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Did anyone else face any barriers that they would like to share? And if not,
Well, I mean, Interestingly enough, I faced the same barriers as Janita, being in the political space. In addition to what she shared, I was also the youngest person ever elected to city council in Ypsilanti. So that was a barrier in itself, getting there, and people doubting that I even had what it took to do the work, or that I knew enough about government or about the community itself, pardon me, to be a council member. But I was grounded in the fact that my neighbors and my constituents elected me, meaning they believed in me. So the people at the table, they were gonna have to, they was gonna find out basically that I knew what I was doing, and that I had what it took to lead in a community and be the voice for those who put me there. And so some of the things that I did are exactly the same. I couldn't have said it any better than, Janita did, about, knowing what you know, being confident in what you know, and also the things that I didn't, I made sure to go out and find out, to learn about them, to hone my skills, to grow in the area so that I could exceed my own expectations of myself, not even worrying about the naysayers, but really for me to represent myself and other young Black women who were not represented in that space, as best as I could. And so I think the thing that I would leave students with is just, yes, get to know yourself, be confident in who you are, and be rooted in that. And nobody will be able to tell you that you cannot accomplish whatever goal you set for yourself. Because again, I never saw myself here, never, but here I am.
That is amazing. Thank you, Nicole. So I'm gonna back up to earlier we were talking about experience, whether it be through organizations on campus, going to conferences, or internships. So tell me, how did you organize your class schedule so that you could work, or so that you could do an internship while in undergrad? What are some of those organizational skills that you used?
So for me, I looked at the class schedule and I saw, I kind of had either a Monday, Wednesday schedule. I don't know if Eastern still does this, but I kind of stacked my classes to make sure I only had 2 main days which I had classes, in which those other 5 days allow me to, work, be involved on campus, or whatever have you. So, like I said, I worked from being my second sophomore year, my second semester sophomore year through when I graduated, I worked full time. So, it was imperative for me to really stay up on, what classes were all scheduled on, Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, and, looking at those classes and, kind of stacking my schedule that way. Now, to be honest, doing that, I think you gotta, understand you may not be able to do everything. You may not be able to go to that event that's on, if you have classes on Monday, Wednesday, or during your work time, it's going to take some sacrifice. I'm just, just being honest, my sacrifice, but you have to recognize in terms of your particular circumstances, your circumstances do not allow for you to do everything. At least for me, my circumstances did not allow for me to do everything. So some of the things that I did, I was able to do, but because of my schedule allowed for it. But other times I was like, yeah, I can't do it. So I think that's part of the growing pains of being an adult, right? You kind of learn that you can't do everything because ultimately your schedule will not allow for it. And if it does, maybe again, you appreciate the time that you was able to participate in that event or in that particular circumstance, and that particular meeting or whatever, and you try to get the most from it. But again, for me, it was just more or less making sure that I was able to schedule my classes, either on a Monday, Wednesday, or a Tuesday, Thursday. I think Eastern being still predominantly commuter school, I think is, kind of geared toward that. So, and especially now with online learning, you may be able to take a class once a week. So, kind of be, aware of those non-traditional class role, class settings or class times that allow for you to do things like that.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to add to that? Okay, so we will move on to the next question. Thank you for that. So to all of our panelists, what is your next career move? Anybody can jump on in there.
Retirement. I'm working towards retirement. So I'm laughing because that's I have 23 years right now. And so the magic number is 30. And so I am hoping at this point, I think I have reached the pinnacle or the height of my career. I have to say that I've had a great run. And so now I am in that downwards time where I really now want to refine and really reevaluate to see in public service, because at the end of the day, I'm a public servant at heart. My heart is like for the people. When I tell you I'm a champion for the citizens of the great state of Michigan, I really am. And so I want to figure out now where I want to transition that mission that I have to be able to still be a public servant. Do I now want to like move out of state government altogether and get more so into the private sector to do more government relations work so that I can effectuate public policy from a different standpoint? But that is where I would like to kind of gravitate. That'll take me out where I'm working smarter and not harder, because I feel like I'm still working really hard, and then move towards retirement, because I really want to be able to stop working like at 62. That's like a goal. And so that I can really use that time to like just enjoy life. So because I'm going to just say in our professions, you just want to have a great work-life balance. It is really not all about the almighty dollar, because if you make the money and you kill yourself, you still can't use it. And so you got to have a good, healthy work balance. As college students, you all take on a lot. You are way, I basically was a traditional student. I came to school to actually, that's all I did was go to school and then turn around, graduate, and then go to work. Whereas you all are already coming in as working students and having to manage. And so you have to look at the fact that you don't want burnout. You want to be able to enter into your career, and you want to be able to work your way through your career, and then you want to have success without burnout. So you need to look at that and have a long range plan. You all should be talking about, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Then where do you see yourself in 10? Whereas I come from a generation where we want longevity in one area. You all are not like that. You are constantly on the move, you're on the go, you're looking to your next endeavor. So you need to plan that out. Where do you see yourself? How do you see this working for you? If you meet these, you need to have a plan B and a C and a D. You just can't have a plan A and be like, oh, forget it. So you have to work through all of that and basically stage your life to determine, what you want to do, how you want to do it, and what's your path to success. And in order to make or have great success, you're going to have a lot of failures. So you can't sit here and believe, like, when you see us now, trust me, we have hit our head several thousand times before we got to this phase where there is some comfort and relaxation, I would say, in our careers. So if I can leave you with anything, please plan wisely and utilize your time, make good use of your time. And like Herman said, if you're running into an obstacle, don't take the L, reroute and try to figure out how that works for you. So at the long run, because we have to work twice as hard sometimes to be able to do some of the things that others cannot do. Or what others do, I should say.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to add on? Nicole?
Yeah, I'll add on. So, I'm listening to Janine, and every time you speak, I'm like, oh, she is speaking my life. So like, as a millennial, I've had a lot of careers already with a degree in communication, and being an organizer and then being an elected official. And so I'm in like my third career already, and I'm only 33. So I'm a clinical therapist, and I'm moving into private practice, which is something that I've always wanted to do, but wasn't sure of. But I'm doing that now while also being an elected official. And actually, my next step there in my career is I'm currently the Democratic nominee for mayor of the city of Ypsilanti. So I took the leap and decided to run for the top office after serving on council for the last 8 years. And so I will be on the ballot next week, and hopefully the outcome is in the affirmative. And so that will be the next step in my political career as I'm navigating, how do I best want to support and uplift the people who supported and uplifted me.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And Herman, what is your next career move?
My next career move is really trying to, well, let me start over. This is my, obviously my second career. I had a first career centered in finance, whether that was dealing with mortgage-backed securities, being an underwriter for a mortgage company, then, well, I was underwriter for a mortgage company, then moved into mortgage-backed securities, then ultimately left that mortgage business and went into actually government operations. I was a manager for the city of Detroit, their solid waste division, and then ultimately ran the city of Detroit's treasury division, two branches of the treasury division for the city of Detroit prior to becoming a lawyer. My goal now, for the first 5 years, is to really start trying to get my, establish myself in this Dallas community. Me not being from here and me not having established relationships here was hard for me initially, but I aligned myself with, I found a mentor. Exactly, I found a mentor in the area of law that I practice in, and he's a person of high regard in the city of Dallas, or in the larger DFW area. So just learning from him the next couple of years, and then establishing myself and growing clientele to the point to where maybe partnership is in, or being a stockholder in the firm is a possibility, or if that's not it, then maybe starting my own firm at that point. But eventually, again, just establishing myself in this Dallas community as a known and a competent attorney in the estate planning and probate space, and that consists of me, getting out, taking on cases, making myself available to people, and doing a really good job, and constantly wanting to, do the best for my clients. So that's where I see myself the next 5 years, and maybe possibly 10 years. I'm not changing my area of practice. This area of practice is one that people really don't understand, because you don't really deal with it until you have been faced with someone who has died, or you are you're thinking about your own particular demise and your own death. You want to kind of plan around that, because you have people who you want to take care of in the event that you pass away. So it's not one that's very as lucrative as, say, people think in terms of corporate law, but it does provide a work-life balance, right? So if I'm, in terms of, I'll make a decent dollar, but I'm not necessarily working 70, 80 hours a week to get $150,000, $170,000, in which, like Janita said, if you're working if you're making $150,000, $170,000 in a law firm, that law firm is going to get every bit of their money's worth. You better believe it, in terms of billable hours. So those who want to become an attorney and you want a work-life balance, think about estate planning, because it does give you a work-life balance. Maybe the firm you with still may have some lofty billable hours, but I would say try to find one that has work-life balance in mind for their attorney, so you don't get burnt out. Because attorneys, Janita works with lawmakers, and a lot of lawmakers are attorneys, right, by trade. And probably the reason they are lawmakers now is because they got burnt out from being a lawyer, and they say, I got to find something different. So do not get, law, I think law, and, I think three is law, the medical profession, they get burnt out, and teachers, believe it or not, are, I think, 3 of the top 5 professions that you get burnt out from pretty easily if you're not careful. So, again, keep that in mind. And that's about it. So.
Thank you. That is great advice. And so let's see. So I would like to read this in case no one has seen it before we go to our last question of the hour. So April, our career coach, states that any student interested in applying to the state of Michigan government jobs or federal government jobs, please meet with her. So that's April. She is an expert in the government applications process. Please take her up on that offer because she's amazing at it. And so last but not least, everyone except for Herman, shameless plug, is your organization currently hiring? And if so, are they looking for certain majors? Are they, how can they go about applying for any type of opportunities that that are available in the Michigan area? So everyone except for Herman can answer this one if you have a response.
Well, April stole my thunder because I'm a state of Michigan employee. So she already dropped it in there. I was like, but for me, the Michigan Department of State, which we are actually hiring. So we are hiring outside of just, it is open. I did go and look. So I do know that there's 14 different positions that are open to the general public and not just state employees only or state of Department of State employees. So, so it varies. So we have like some of our branch staff are DOS A's. We have some clerical staff and some stuff in IT. So it really depends on what you're doing, but we're not the only department that is hiring within the state of Michigan. With April, worked with her to see how, because the state of Michigan is always looking for great talent. And a lot of our positions do require that you have to have a bachelor's degree. For me to be able to do what I was doing, when I first transitioned to work for the governor, when I worked for Governor Granholm, I had to have my master's degree. So they were looking for a graduate degree or, a higher. So it is incumbent upon you to make sure you have all your apples lined up or in a bunch to ensure that you're coming in, because departments are still looking at college transcripts. They're looking at overall how diversified you are as an individual. How much community service do you do? That's important. We want to know because departments, we do service type activities. So we want to know, do you give back to your community? How involved are you? And far as your schooling, your education, your degree, well, we may not have to have it in that particular, like in this particular arena, but we do need for you to have a 4-year degree in some positions in state government. So that is a plus. So I would encourage you to work with April and look on NeoGov, because that's what it is, NeoGov, to be out there and to look to see if there's something with you. And I also want to say that for you all, that the state of Michigan also has internships. So we, our departments, we look for student interns, it depends on various areas. I know in our legal area, they had their legal interns, but the state of Michigan has student employment or student internships. And also for me, because I work with the legislature, you need to look on their legislative website because their hiring is different from ours. So the House of Representatives, because I used to be legislative staff, and the Senate. So their websites also list their job opportunities, but they also list internships. That's the difficulty far as having students to come to Lansing. But now with the fact that we do a lot of things virtually, they may even be able to allow for a hybrid type situation far as being able to intern. So I will also recommend that you look there if this is something that you're interested as far as in the line of public government, public law and government, and I want to steal Nicole's thunder, but I'm quite sure the city of Ypsilanti, they probably have things of that nature in Washington County. But we are definitely hiring in the state. So please look.
You did not steal my thunder at all. Because we are looking for interns. Not only, so municipal government is a little different. The departments are typically like very niche, right? So we have openings in the planning department or in economic development. So not always tied directly to like politics or the political science arena, but still opportunities for employment in our clerk's office with our city manager. But we do always entertain interns, a lot of the local elected officials, not only on city council, but a lot of our newly elected folks who will be going into office in January will be looking for students and interns for their teams. I know I'll be looking for some for mine. So please reach out to me directly, because I will be meeting interns to help support, you know, my time in office. But yeah, so the work piece is hard because, you know, it's a 4-year degree, sometimes higher, is required to do some of these roles in the departments within the city government and county government, but internships are galore. They're always available. We create them even if students want them and we, you know, want to work alongside them.
Thank you very much. What a great way to end our conversation for today. So Nicole, I know you said that you do have a few opportunities available. Would you mind dropping your email in the chat? So for those who are seeking internships, they can reach out to you.
Yes, I will drop my cell phone and my email because I am looking for interns ASAP. The election ends next week.
Wonderful, please do. And if people aren't able to get it, I can reach out to you and I can make sure others get it. So thank you so much to our panelists, Janita Moore, Harmon Moncure, and Nicole Brown for carving time out of your schedule to sit on our panel. I hope you learned some things because I certainly did. And everyone have a phenomenal day.